So, welcome everyone. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy my friend Jay Acunzo is here. We're going to have an awesome show today. Before we get started, I wanted to just touch base on two news items. If you didn't listen to my last episode, I announced that this asset, the marketing companion, I have sold this to Sandy Carter, who is also going to become the new host of the show beginning in January of 2025. It's a very exciting new era for this show. Sandy has so many connections all around the world, and she's already talking about so many cool ideas that it's just gonna bring a new energy to this show. And I'm not going away. I've got a few more episodes left, and I will be a co-host with Sandy here and there. So I will still have some marketing companion presence. The second, and by the way, so if you want to hear more about that, that would be episode 328. Look for that show. You can hear more about the transfer of the show, why I did it and what's happening next. Another really important and cool news item is that our sponsor, SEMrush, was acquired by Adobe this week. I think that is so cool, and I can certainly understand this. SEMrush is such a technological leader. This is a technology platform I use probably more than any other platform, other than maybe ChatGPT, these days. But I use SEMrush literally every day in my business, in my consulting, in my when I'm working on strategy. It's a great tool. They continue to innovate. They're a very, very exciting company, and they have a new AI visibility tool. So you ought to check that out. You can track your AI visibility score. You get a single clear benchmark of your share of voice across AI search platforms, almost like the old domain authority score. It's really cool. So go to semrush.com/AI AI hyphen SEO. AI hyphen SEO. So, Jay, it's our swan song episode, my friend.
I know. Well, thanks for inviting me first and foremost to be a part of this ride. I mean, what a thrill. Also, it's fun to hang out with you on a scheduled basis. We'll have to keep that going behind the
I
scenes.
know. That's been the best part of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you are the tenured co-host at this point.
Wow.
I
Really?
yeah, I think so. So, my first iteration for my first 6 years was I had Tom Webster as
Yep.
my co-host.
Sure.
And then my next iteration, I had Brooke Sellis as my co-host. And then I went to this format where I had six rotating co-hosts. And there's never been a contract between any of us. It's like, hey,
No.
if this is fun and you want to keep doing it, let's keep doing it. But some people have had career shifts. Some people have, had stuff get in the way. I think you've been around since I went to the third iteration. And look, I'm so happy because your shows always do well. We always get lots of engagement and comments on your shows. So I'm really happy. I'm really grateful. And we will have to systematically and mindfully keep in touch with each other as this show winds down. So Jay suggested a really good topic. And one of the things that's so fun for me, so fascinating for me, is that this show is in its 13th year and we've never really repeated a topic in 13 years. And Jay said, wrote me a note and he said, hey, you're winding down the show. Maybe this would be a good time to talk about sustainability. Like, how do we keep that presence going? And boy, I mean, that is really something I'm very, very passionate about. It's not easy. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Did you have something in mind, a topic, a story, a question when you brought that up to me?
Yeah. There's something in the water for sure about longevity, sustainability. I think, driven by themes and stories and issues with society, driven by maybe the pandemic that we all went through, which I still think we all downplay or overlook the effects
Yes,
of that
I
on
agree.
everything, including
I
ourselves.
agree. Yeah.
It's a bizarre thing. It's like, hey, that happened. Well, back to work. Um, and there was also a distinct moment or two between us, or that I saw from you and I experienced separately that I thought
Mhm.
this would be a good topic. So one is, I've pivoted my business over time from being a pretty road heavy paid speaker to
Mhm.
now coaching and selling services to teams and coaching individuals and coaching executives and creators and authors and speakers on their public presence. And so that shift, as I was talking about that publicly, the great Kyle Lacey, who I know
Yeah.
longtime CMO, veteran in the B2B marketing space, he posted publicly, he's like, very few people I know grind like Jay. And I've never felt like a grinder per se. And I was like, that's interesting. There's something about the way I operate that he goes, Jay grinds it out and sticks it out and goes for the long haul here. But I don't feel like that word applied to me. Then separately, I saw you show up alongside our friend Chris Ducker, who wrote the book The Long Haul Leader, talking about longevity, talking about being a leader publicly. You and I both believe in investing in your own personal voice and brand. And you've been doing it for a long, long time. So I just sort of thought something's in the water, and we're both experiencing moments where people are seeing it from us. How do you stay known, stay in the moment, stay influential? And I think another version of this, or sorry, another layer to this, and I'll
Mhm.
shut up here, is I think most people just assume you lurch between timely trends, right? You see the folks who wrap their entire persona in
Yeah.
Web3 for a time are now
Sure.
doing that with AI. Not
Yeah.
everybody, but a lot of those people. And I don't
Almost
I think it's
everybody.
so much more nuanced, strategic, and joyful than that. So I'll hand it over to you, Mark. Like that's the setup.
Um, so yeah, so first, why don't you remind us of what? So first of all, content fuels the brand, whether it's your company brand or your personal brand. So content fuels the brand. So we need to start there. And consistent content leads to the consistent brand. So talk a little bit about
Mm,
your content journey. Like where, like focus
yep,
on
yep,
blog versus podcast, podcast versus newsletter. What, where have you pivoted? Where have you kept things the same? Let's just kind of
yeah.
set the stage. I could talk about me a little bit. I think, most people maybe know, but talk a little bit about sort of your content assets,
Yeah.
the history of that have fueled
Yeah.
your brand.
Really quickly, I'll give you the arc. And by the way, I love that you went there because I do think the two engines or, two elements that make up the engine would be curiosity and the
Mm,
creative practice to pursue it,
yeah,
like that repeatable place you publish, newsletter, blog, or otherwise. I started as an aspiring sports journalist in school, and I always had a blog as a student before it was a thing, like
that's awesome.
blogger.com.
That's
And
awesome.
I interned at ESPN, and the head of PR at ESPN had a one-on-one with me. He met with all the interns in his department, and he knew this about me somehow. And he's like, "Tell me about this blogging stuff." I was like, "Shouldn't you be telling me about that?" So something went off in my brain, like purely because I was interested in pursuing curiosity and self-expressing and writing about sports when no one gave me permission to. Here comes the internet with tools to do that. Here's this impressive person asking me questions and taking me seriously. And then, by the way, I pivoted out of sports with a job at Google in sales during the interview process for my first job out of college in a domain that was not sports or really writing at all. They were asking me more questions about that blog, which 12
Right.
people and my mom read, by the way.
And I'm going to interrupt you right
Please,
here
yeah.
because I just want to tell everybody how important this is, especially if you are a young person and a student and a student. Whenever I talk to classes, college classes, I always, a lot of these classes today, they're teaching young people how to create content. And just listen to what Jay's saying here, that this gave him an edge. And
Yes.
you need an edge today, even if you've got 12 people reading it, right? So start creating content, start creating your brand now, and do not stop.
No.
Now, back to your regularly scheduled Jay Acunzo statement.
Well, I've published on the internet, since 2005
Yeah,
without taking a break
yeah,
because I love it. I love to write. I love to self-express. but mostly I'm curious and I'm just pointing the creative practice at whatever I'm curious about. So that shifted after getting a job at Google and then not liking sales, but more interested in business and tech now. And then I left Google for a tiny startup, and this content marketing thing came along. And I
Mm.
got really excited, but then I saw a lot of people like not caring about good editorial or good creative. And my journalist heart was breaking inside. And so I decided I'm going to write about that aspect of content marketing, the content side of content marketing. And so my blog shifted. I, dropped the old blog, started a new one, and started writing about this emerging field of marketing. And along comes this connection from an ad agency. And she's like, I have this title, director of content. Her name is Aristia Rosenberg. Like, Jay, you have this title. Let's get drinks and talk shop about what we're going to do with this field. It's interesting, but we're new to this. And that led to a community group. So I have a blog going on my own URL, just no one reading it, but self-expressing and sharpening my thinking.
Mhm.
And then some serendipity in the real world that led to a community meetup that Aristia and I built. And so I have these two projects purely on the side, not looking to make it famous or monetizable, that allowed me to persist and pursue and sharpen my thinking. And honestly, Mark, it exploded from there. Starting my
Yeah.
own podcast, giving speeches,
Mm.
creating random series both for myself and for brand clients, having one-off random videos. Like I'm always tinkering. Sometimes it looks really glossy, like partnering up with a video producer friend of mine to produce like a 4-part docu-series just because it felt right. And
Yeah,
sometimes
cool.
it's really hidden. Like
Yeah.
I'm slogging through the week and Friday is my day to ship and the train is leaving the station at 8 a.m. and I have a ticket. No matter how I feel, inspired or not, I'm
Yeah.
getting on that damn train. Right. And
Right.
that's served me it's served me for decades now. It's served me so, so, so well. And I look around and I see people going, well, if it's not viral and big, if it's not making me money, it's not worth doing. And I'm like, no, you're missing the foundational layer of all this stuff. So to
Hmm.
me, I point to side projects, curiosity, and a creative practice as my engine of staying power.
Well, there's just so many keen points in your discussion there. And I especially liked the last reference to the trains leaving the station. It's time to get
Yes.
on board. So, one of the things that I talk about a lot and write a lot about is that when you start this journey, it's not a project, it's a lifestyle.
Hmm.
My friend Anna, she's a great marketer in France. I had a call with her today, and she's a runner. And she said, we talked about running. And whenever you start running, it's not easy at first, and maybe you're disappointed and you lose your breath. But the more you do it, the easier it gets and the better you feel. And if you quit for a few weeks, you kind of, backslide a little bit. And for Anna, running is part of her lifestyle. And I think it's the same with your personal brand. You can't look at it as a project. If you're committed to going to the gym, you schedule time to go to the gym. If you're trying to learn a musical instrument, you schedule time to take lessons. You schedule time to go, on a to play with your kids or go on a vacation or go on a date with your significant other. And it's the same. If
Yeah.
this is important to you, you have to make this part of your life and schedule time to do it. And you don't quit and you don't give up and you stay on that train. And I think to me, it's not really about being creative or more inventive than other people, but I'm disciplined. It's a discipline. I know you believe that too. We've talked about that
Yes.
a lot.
Yes.
It's a creative discipline. It's a personal branding discipline, um, and the discipline that I teach about in my college classes and also the personal branding class. And let's see how this lands on you if you have anything to add. As I talk about, really there's 4 disciplines. The first discipline is awareness. And a lot of people say, oh, I've got writer's block. I don't know what to write about. And if it's Saturday and you got to publish on Sunday and you're facing a blank screen, well, maybe you will have writer's block. But what you have to do is view your life as potential stories. So you're being bombarded with ideas
Yes.
in the media and podcasts and statistics that you read in the news. And just so the first one is just be aware of your world as potential stories that are relevant to your audience. Number two, write those down. Because if you don't write it down, you're going to lose it. And the only time I ever really had, my journey, I blogged like 680 weeks in a row without missing. Took a little break when I almost died of COVID, came back from COVID. I've never missed a week since then.
Right.
So other than a few weeks, I've probably blogged 1,000 weeks in a row.
And by the way, that's incredibly admirable, but people who are on the video are seeing me nod as if you're like, my shirt is wet because it's raining out. It's a matter of fact thing to hear you say, I
Yeah.
blogged that many weeks in a row. I'm like, yes, because that's what Mark Schaefer does. That's what the writer in you does. That's what the creator or leader, that's what you're supposed to do. It's not
Just like,
supposed to
yeah,
be,
just like you're a runner or anything
yeah,
else. It's just
yeah,
you get up and you board the train. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then, the same with the podcast. We're in our 13th year, never missed an episode, right?
right.
So I've been incredibly, there was one episode I lost my voice, had COVID again, by the way. And so I used 11 labs, synthetic voice, right?
Yeah,
Because I just wouldn't quit.
right.
So number one, be aware. Number two, record it. Number three, schedule the time,
Yes.
right?
Amen.
Schedule the time. And and then the fourth part, which is related to that, do it at a time when you can relax. If the kids are bouncing all around you, if the phone is ringing, if you've got customer calls that afternoon and you're stressed about it, it ain't gonna work. So you've got to create this space and this time, maybe every week, where you can now look at the list of ideas you've collected,
Yeah.
pick the one that's most fun, and go for it. So
Yeah.
those are my four disciplines. How's that land on you?
I've always struggled with this because some people have turned my beloved writing and creating things more broadly into a tactic. And they want to get good at the tactic, but they don't want to be a writer. You know what I mean? What we're hinting
Mhm.
at is the identity of a writer that what follows from that is you write. And you write on a schedule and you create an obligation for yourself that is, yes, joyful, but sometimes not. And you find the pocket of your time. Like I used to wake up for those blogs I mentioned before and march to a coffee shop behind my apartment in Boston. And like once or twice a week, I'd be the first one there. I'd sit there on the worst, least comfortable stool you've ever in humanity's exist. I was like blown away by how I was like, can I get a couch, please? But I'd be the only one there, have a beautiful, overpriced coffee, and I would write to nobody, right? Because I wanted the feel of my fingers on the keys. I wanted the clack. I wanted the hit publish. Like the reward was I did the thing. And what I struggle with, Mark, is to convince somebody or to coach somebody who's telling me, I'm only doing it for the outcome. I'm not intrinsically motivated by it at all. I'm like, I don't know how to help you. Find the things that make you intrinsically motivated, which might not mean waking up early to write. It might mean when you drive your car and you have a moment of peace after dropping the kids, you text yourself or use a voice memo and that becomes a podcast episode, right? I'm like saying
Yeah,
your
yeah,
own
yeah.
flavor exists. You got to find it. But you got to really treat it like this is a discipline
Mhm.
because who I am is this. And because I am that, not I'm temporarily doing that, then this is the behavior that follows. Which by the way, I think that's what like all the authors, James Clear and others who talk about habits, that's what they talk about. Is like you make it, I am the type of person who is fit, not I go to the gym, right? So again, to me, it's about intrinsic motivation, self-awareness, figuring out the shape of it for yourself. And I think what Mark you laid out there was here are the touchstones, here are the broad strokes or guardrails. It's like you need that practice. You need to schedule it. But it looks different for you. It might not be a weekly blog like it was for Jay.
Yeah,
That's not the point. It's to find your version of it.
yeah. So I want to tease something out of that, a subtle point. I think it's important. But before I do, I want to remind everyone that this show is brought to you by Brevo. Brevo is so awesome. And here's what's awesome about Brevo. They have 500,000 customers in 180 countries. eBay is their customer. Michelin is their customer. And you can be their customer. And it's so inexpensive and so easy to use. I mean, Brevo is just awesome. We're so fortunate to have them as a sponsor of the show. They're going to continue to be a sponsor of the show in the new Sandy Carter era. Try Brevo for free. You're going to love it. Go to brevo.com/ marketing companion. Brevo is BREVO / marketing companion. You could try it for free. And if you do sign up for it, use the promo code companion to get 50% off. So I want to tease something out of this when you talked about tactic versus this long-term strategic, almost existential
Yep. Very, very.
practice. And you were saying the word writing, but it could be video, it could be podcast, it could be, whatever your content drug of choice might be.
Hmm.
And so whenever I wrote Known, I interviewed 97 people from all around the world who became known in their discipline. And it was I went out to all my friends. I'm not sure if you and I were connected that long ago, or not. But I went out to my friends. I said, I want to know who are people who are known in their fields, not marketers. I know enough of those. And I interviewed people in finance and education and construction and music and art. And they all did the same four things. And that became the structure of the book. Now, there was another thread above and beyond those four things that I thought was really interesting. Almost all of them started doing it as a tactic. They look around the world and they say, oh, there's this thing called content marketing. There's this thing called personal branding. I want to build my business, and I think this makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to, read the book, or I'm going to take Mark's class and we're going to start. But then once you start to become known, the higher level purpose kind of kicks in. And it happened to almost every person who started. So maybe you're an outlier if this has always sort of been kind of in your heart and soul.
Always. Always.
Yeah,
I fell in love with the magic of stories and writing and wanted to, and creatives are the freaks who look at what they admire. And instead of the rational reaction saying, that's great, I could never, we're the freaks who go, that's great, and I'm going to make that. Right. So I've always felt that way. And I do think I stepped into a world where that was put to use in a different use case than, prior iterations of marketing or media or creative jobs. I think there was a version of me where if I quit media, if I didn't pursue sports journalism, which ended up being the case, then I'd have like three choices: go be a teacher, go
yeah.
work in PR,
Mm,
or go be a creative at an ad agency. And along came content marketing, which had this diverse array of options that were different, and then the creative
sure.
economy that followed.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, so when I started creating, like, personal branding wasn't even a thing.
Right.
No, I mean,
Typewriters were barely a thing when you started creating, Mark.
shush. Just shush it. Shush it. This is no way. You could have totally avoided that in our final episode together, my friend.
Oh, I
But
chose not to.
and I'm glad you did. I'm
I
glad you
chose
did. I'm glad you did.
silence.
Thank you. Um, but when I started, it was literally it was an experiment. I wanted to learn. I wanted to try it. I started the podcast for the same reason. I'm a teacher. I'm a consultant. I wanted to learn. What
Yeah.
is it like?
Yeah.
And then, and this is consistent with a lot of people I interviewed, was that once it starts to work, you say, wow, like I have this new power that, like, I can include other people in my blog and lift up other people, and I can recommend other people, and I can use my platform to lift them and help them in their careers. And now, like, year by year by year by year, that's become even more important for me. And this is this was consistent with almost everybody I talked to. That, by the end of the conversation, as I was interviewing them, they were talking about, well, I started because I wanted to start a business,
Yeah.
but now it means something more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm doing it because I'm really helping people.
Yes.
I really have influence. I'm making a dent in the universe because people are paying attention to me. And over time, it's like if you had a pie chart that showed, oh, Mark's doing this for the business reason, maybe in year one, that's like 90%. And now it's like 90% the other way,
Right.
where I
Right.
do it because, you know, people send me comments saying, you opened my eyes today. Thank you so much for addressing this. I've been so confused about this. You really helped me today.
I think a lot of people that you're describing, not everybody, I can't generalize with total certainty here, but I think some of those people are experiencing or realizing what, I was privileged to have my parents and some great teachers show me, which is
Mm,
their eyes were opened later to a reality that always awaited them, but they weren't shown it, whether because I have more privilege or I just met the right people earlier or whatever. But I was thinking about, I was trying to make sense of this article I was writing, and it kind of had these touchstones, which apply here. It was like there's this old adage among artists, writers, even in the business world, which is we create what we wish existed in the world, right? So it's like if that's always been my starting point is we create what we wish existed in the world. And that kind of changes, some might say devolves in the business context that we place it in. So we create what we wish existed in the world. Okay, no, we create what the market wants to exist. And if that's your starting point, I think I have an advantage because I'm going to run through walls. I'm going to be more motivated when things get hard and the market's not
yeah.
responding because
Yeah.
there's no wasted effort for me. I get something out of everything I create, even if the market doesn't respond to it, right? So I think I'll persist on the theme of today, the persisting of it all. I
Mhm.
might persist or chip away, chip away, chip away and find a breakthrough where someone who goes, but I posted that 3 times and I didn't get a response. Now I'm off to find the next thing the market wants. They would
Mm,
drop it sooner. So that's
mm,
like one dimension. And then just to finish this rant, Mark, we
mm.
create that which we wish existed in the world. No, we create what the market wants to exist. No, we create what a few companies building algorithms in the market want to exist. Oh no, we create what a few people who claim they know the trick to what the algorithms
Ah,
want
geez.
to exist.
Yeah,
And if you go down that rabbit hole, you end where it begins. You go,
I know.
this is maddening. Screw it. I'm just going to create what I wish existed in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're going to end up anywhere. So just start there.
It's so, yeah. I wrote about this recently. It's sort of intoxicating to hear all these tips and tricks. And I think this is a topic for another day. But, now, I mean, the big trick, let's say with like LinkedIn, it's not just content, but then it's commenting on content. And like, so it's like I'm at this point where
Yeah.
you have to ask this question, to what end? To what end? And I think that's the question you always have to like look up from the tips and the tricks. And I remember in the early days of content and social media and SEO, I mean, there were all these tips and tricks and rules. And basically, I just sort of came to this conclusion that I just had to stay centered. I had to stay centered on helping people, on on delivering great work. Double down on quality. And this is probably we could talk probably another hour on that, but
Yeah.
that, I mean, at the end of the day, all these tips and tricks, you can trick somebody into clicking the link, but you can't trick them into subscribing to you. It's got to be great. You've got to double down on being helpful and generous
Right.
and push those tricks aside because to me, that is the end of
Yeah.
showing yourself as a person who cares, showing yourself as a person that has values, and I'm going to demonstrate that through my content, and not just be spending your time on every tip and trick and taking that focus
Yeah.
away from your content.
Yeah, like a lot of people, I talk all about resonance. That's the theme that I'm kind of
Yeah,
riding with and owning in the world, and
sure.
it'll be the subject of the next book and all these things. And I'm staking a reputation to the word, at least in this moment in time. And so
Hmm.
one of the questions I get, whether people think they're being clever, like a gotcha, or they're genuinely curious, is, well, Jay, but how do you measure resonance? And I can wax eloquent about like straightening the funnel versus broadening the funnel. And, the sales cycle gets shorter and people mention you when you're not in the room. And that's all well and good. And I have like actual rigor and metrics I give my clients. But I say it begins with the realization that you can purchase reach, but resonance must be earned. So you need to
Hmm.
measure that which you can only earn. So to your point, I can buy downloads for my podcast.
Yeah,
I can't buy people listening to the end. I
yeah,
can buy emails for my newsletter. I shouldn't. I could though. I can't buy people responding or that response having a certain flavor to it, like a passionate, moment of agreement or good question or reciprocating with their own story. I can't purchase that. So you're out there trying to earn it and you can measure the things that can only be earned. But I do think there's this like theme emerging here, Mark, which is this longevity idea. You have to fall in love with the process of actually doing the work more than you fall in love with or center on the outcomes of that work. And I think
mm,
they go hand in hand, but you have to
yeah,
sequence them correctly and fall in love with the process of doing the work, which by the way, that might mean you decrease your productivity and your output, quote unquote, a little bit because
yeah,
you decide if I give up too much to automation or outsourcing, then I get too far from doing the work. But that's what I love. That's what gives me joy and energy and the results and impact that I have later.
yeah.
And so I think that's the theme that I'm hearing from today.
Well, and that's why I only did this show twice a month instead. Most podcasts are every week, but it wouldn't have been joyful for me. I mean, I could have twice as many downloads. I could make twice as much money from sponsors, but it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be joyful. And when
Right.
you're not having fun, if it becomes a grind, that's going to show up to your audience and then you're going to lose them. So, Jay, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being with me along on this podcast journey for several years now. I love you, brother, and I know we'll stay in touch. Getting a little
I
emotional.
love
We got,
Mark, I
got two
love you,
shows left.
and
Got two shows left, baby.
you are doing exactly what you laid out. Like you've been doing it for a while, and I know you'll continue to do it. You've been doing it for your family, you've been doing it for the industry. You've been nothing but generous with me, including platforming me on this show, and I'm just so grateful for you, brother.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, buddy. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time, two more times on the Marketing Companion.